We're going to now try and get our guest of the evening. Ralph, are you there?
Hello?
Ralph, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I hear you fine.
Terrific. So I was just giving our listeners a little background about my fandom, but let's move right into the meat and potatoes of the evening, the part of the evening, and we are just very, very honored to have once again on the show, and hopefully we'll have him even on the show after tonight numerous times or whatever, because he's just been a fascinating guest, not only as a member of Utopia, but as an accomplished musician himself, and I'm just so pleased as my turn here to be guest host to have Ralph Schuckett here to join us again on Rundgren Radio. Ralph, thank you so much for taking the time once again. We all thoroughly enjoyed you. We've been on the show last few times, and appreciate you being on again tonight. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
A little background about Ralph and myself. I worked at Columbia Records in the early 90s, as did Ralph. Both of us were doing A&R at the time, and we actually met at that time frame when both of us were part of the A&R department. At that time, it was headed up by a gentleman named, two gentlemen, a gentleman named Rick Chertoff and Dave Novick, who were heading up the department at the time. And tonight, we're going to divide this into three parts. One, talking about Ralph's experiences with Todd Rundgren's Utopia from the beginning. Next, talking about Todd and Ralph's association reunited here with Wizard or True Star, but I think it's also important for everyone to also be able to hear about Ralph and the accomplishments that he's had since leaving Utopia, which are just absolutely fantastic, not only from a performance standpoint, but also from an A&R standpoint, which is artist and repertoire. That's the lingua franca of recording industry people. The people actually sign and record artists and work with them, and Ralph did that with tremendous success, particularly with one artist at Columbia Records, which we'll talk about later. So we'll talk more about that in just our particular days working together at Columbia Records. Mm-hmm. But Ralph, if it's agreeable with you, I just want to talk a little bit about the time frame going back to A Wizard or True Star and recording that record, if that's agreeable with you.
Oh, sure.
Well,
I'm an agreeable guy.
Let me just start off by talking about, and we'll also be taking some calls a little bit later too. So, folks, hang in there who do want to make some calls, and we'll definitely put you on. But let's go back in time in 1972, and Something Anything was released, roughly around May 1972, and Todd, who had a hit in 1970 with "We Gotta Get You a Woman," strikes pay dirt in an even bigger way with "I Saw the Light," and propels Something Anything to some substantial success. And that song's a song that really put him on the map as a recording artist. He at that time been producing people, whether it was James Cotton or Ian and Sylvia, Badfinger and stuff like that, but was a relative unknown as a recording artist until I Saw the Light cracks the top 20 and everything. The record then goes on to have good success. Hello, It's Me is not released until almost a year later, after Something Anything had run its course. But he tours in 1972. As I said, the record had some significant success, and then goes back into the studio. And I believe it's that point in time your association begins with him, where he then unveils the beginning of the recording of A Wizard or True Star at the Secret Sound Studios. Right.
Yeah, that is what happened. I mean, that's the chronological order of things. Yeah.
So you're going in the studio with him at this time. He's coming off of these pretty much mainstream top 40 pop hits or whatever, yet the musical direction of this album is 180 degrees different and everything. Did you sense like, hey, what's up here or whatever? We're not doing I Saw the Light Part 2 or whatever.
I'm trying to remember. I think Well, the whole experience was kind of surprising and unpredictable as it was. I think Moogie had told me a little bit about him, but actually he didn't even know what we were in for. So I guess the whole thing was a surprise, pleasant surprise. We just thought the music was really fresh sounding, and we were all sort of concentrating on what we were supposed to do, which is kind of what you do in a recording session. So I don't think, at least I didn't evaluate it in terms of Todd's career or a career move, or whether it was a good follow-up to his other records or anything. But it was very interesting and fun, and it was some of it was challenging because it was there was some complicated music there. But we just I always just kind of loved everything that he came up with, and I didn't really question it until I guess sometime later when we were in the band touring. I think when we went on the Midnight Special, I believe it was, or some national TV show, and Todd performed "Hello, It's Me," and that's when he had his kind of bird feather costume on.
Yes.
And I remember his manager was angry at him for that, and I remember Moogie saying, "Oh my God, this is a career. The guy's doing he's ruining his career. It's his first chance, to be on national television, and all these millions of people are going to see him, and they're expecting 'Hello, It's Me' like
Yo Sayer or Seals and Troughs or something.
Yeah, they're expecting a middle-of-the-road, easy-listening, mellow kind of performer, I guess. And here was this guy who looked amazing, but definitely not what people expected. And so I remember, Moogie saying that, and he was kind of more conscious of all the guys in the band, he was the one who was the most conscious of career moves and marketing and that kind of stuff. The rest of us just were players, and I don't think we gave much thought to any of that other stuff. So that was kind of the first time anyone it had come to my attention, anything having to do with Todd's career, long-term career, and the marketing of Todd and that kind of thing. And frankly, I sort of didn't care at the time one way or the other because I figured he knew what he was doing, although it was kind of a pain for the guys in the band to have to put on all those costumes and makeup every night and then wash it off, and it was kind of we were never comfortable with all that stuff. It was just kind of an extra hassle, and we thought we were musicians, with a capital M, and that the music should speak for itself and stuff like that. Which
sure.
Obviously, with that kind of attitude, it's rare that you could be, a successful musician in the pop world, especially nowadays, without thinking of your image and how you're going to market yourself and who your audience is and all that kind of stuff. But at the time, we just we were kind of proud of being players, and we thought that was just kind of an extra hassle.
Now they talk about it in the Billy James book, Dream Goes On Forever, about the reticence the band had about the makeup and everything. And if memory serves me right, the book talks about at one point the band just decided, like, you know what, we're not going to wear all this stuff or whatever. And you just kind of went out there, and I guess nothing was said about it, and then you just stopped wearing the makeup and everything. Was that the case?
I don't really remember. I know that there were a couple of, we were on the road a lot, and there were some gigs where, where for some reason, either because the makeup case was lost or the costumes hadn't been laundered or, something like that. There were some gigs where we just kind of went on in, pretty much not really street clothes, but, much more toned down outfits and without makeup. I remember there was a few gigs where we did that. And I think when it was actually talked about and the decision was made, I believe it was the second tour that we did as Utopia. And I think, I don't remember whose decision it was, to be honest. I don't know if it was the band on strike, or I think more likely it was Todd just thinking, well, been there, done that, let's do something else.
Now, I think I'm sorry.
No, and that's when the whole, his whole concept of the 7 rays was kind of the defining concept of that particular tour, which was the second Utopia album.
Another live.
Yeah, and he and Todd, the 7 rays was a concept that he had learned about from. He was really into theosophy. I don't know if anybody in the audience knows what that is, but it was popular around the turn of the century, I think. And there's still people who do it today, but it's basically kind of a westernized version of, I guess, maybe Buddhism or Hinduism or something. I don't know. But they have, and it's where they talk about different planes and different planes of reality and vibrations and chakras and, the power of colors, certain colors to achieve certain results and certain frequencies to achieve certain results. And at the time, he was really into those books. And so I think he looked at each person in the band and assigned one of the 7 rays to each of us. And then that had to do with a color. I think it might have had, I can't remember if it had to do with the month we were born in or anything like that, but so he'd assign us each kind of a color and a sort of like what each individual brought to the band, or what our personalities were, and it was all tied in with the concept of the 7 rays. And then that would mean like everything we wore, all the costumes we wore had to be the color that we were. Mm-hmm. And it was probably pretty interesting. I can't remember any of the details of it, unfortunately, but
it was a while ago. But I will say this: theosophy is really like a Western mysticism rooted in kind of Eastern religion, and you saw it certainly on the another live album that you did, and also Initiation has a lot of theosophy, particularly side 2. Todd particularly was very interested in Alice Bailey, who was a Western mystic who wrote something called A Treatise on Cosmic Fire.
Right.
And that is side 2 of Initiation.
Yeah.
Although I don't know, I would assume that that book was the influence for Todd to...
Yeah, that was one of them.
Side 2, Alice Bailey's A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. And I will say this, when you were wearing the costumes and makeup, for those listeners where this era kind of predates them, that was very standard amongst rock bands at the time. You had Genesis with Peter Gabriel, David Bowie at the time. It was the glitter era, if you will.
Yeah.
A lot of artists went on stage very costumed and makeup. So what Utopia was doing was was very similar to what Yes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and certainly Genesis with Peter Gabriel were doing in a very theatrical, costumed way and everything.
Yeah.
But having said that, backing all that up was just absolutely superlative music. And getting back to A Wizard or True Star, the lineup on that band, the lineup of that band on that record is just stellar when you look back on it. There's yourself, there's Moogie, there's John Sigler, there's John Siomos on drums, who then went on to play on a record sold a few copies called Frampton Comes Alive.
Right.
A few years later when he joined Peter Frampton or whatever. And then guest musicians, David Sanborn, Rick Derringer, etc. But the core of the band, yourself, Moogie, John, and of course, Todd, really makes that album go and everything. And from what I've read and what I've heard, although the record was produced and written by Todd, it seemed like all of you played really an integral element. You were not just people playing the music, but also came with a lot of musical ideas, and Todd kind of welcomed that. Could you talk a little further about that?
Yeah, well, he's always been, he's not one of these people who tells you what to play, sometimes you'll do a session and the producer or the artist will say, can you play this, or even there might be a written chart or something. And Todd's never been a real micromanager, so he would just give us the chord changes and just tell us to make something up. And then if we made something up that he didn't like, he would say do something else. But he wouldn't say, I want you to play, whole notes in this section and then, eighth notes in that section. And he never made specific requests for us but of us. But he would just say do something else, and then so whoever it was that he was talking to would try something else, and sometimes he'd go, nah, do something else, and do something that's not as predictable, or do something that's more interesting melodically, or do something with more of a fatter sound or a thinner sound or whatever. So yeah, we all, and that was really full. It really gives a musician a real kind of. It makes the musician feel good about what he's doing. If the boss trusts you to kind of come up with whatever you feel is right, and I think that was probably one of the reasons he liked that group of musicians, was that he knew we thought of music in terms of the whole. Nobody was trying to. We were all composers, I guess, is what it was. Nobody was trying to say, "Oh, I'm gonna take this amazing guitar solo here," or, I'm gonna do something that's technically brilliant and everyone's gonna hear how good I am, or anything. We were more of a team. We were team players, and we all strived, or is it strove? I don't know. We all wanted to make a cohesive sound, and didn't want to get in each other's way, and didn't want to get in the way of. Well, actually, I was going to say the vocals, except we didn't know what the vocals were, because he did all that afterwards. But we just wanted to make everything kind of, all the pieces locked together like pieces of a puzzle. So nothing got in the way of anything else.
Now, we have a caller here. Let me see if I can get him on. I think someone wants to ask you a question. If we can go to that caller 1 second.
Sure.
Okay. We've got someone from the 816 area code. Do you have a question for Ralph?
Actually, I just called in to listen. I just got on and didn't know who was being interviewed.
Okay. Well, this is David Jurman, guest host, and Ralph Schuckett here on the line.
Oh, yeah. I've spoken to him before, and he was a great guest. So I'll have to listen and find out if there's anything to ask.
Who is this?
Chris Williams. He spoke last time.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Hi,
Chris.
How do? Thanks for remembering. Yeah, we talked about keyboards. And anyway, so just getting caught up.
You're a keyboard player, right?
No, just a sort of person who was always fascinated by synthesizers and.
Right. Now I remember.
Yeah, unfortunately, never was a musician. But are you talking about the being on the arena tour, or?
We're talking about that. We're going to be talking later, but right now we're just talking about going back in the day and just talking about the recording of A Wizard or True Star. And,
wonderful.
You were calling in, and please continue to listen. And Ralph, I'll continue with our questions and everything. Let me just talk about one song that's just an amazing, classic song to this day. And, of course, the song that Todd pretty much ends most of his concerts with, at least the times I've seen him. I can't recall him not ending the show with Just One Victory. And do you remember playing on that and hearing that when it was finished and saying to yourself, what a special song it is? Because I still get goosebumps when I hear it.
Yeah, that's to be honest, I have to listen to it again. This must sound funny since I just got off a tour where I was playing it every night. But to be honest, I can't remember at the moment. I can't remember exactly, what went on when we recorded that. But I do know that I always thought it was I think with that song, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but Todd might have had the entire song written already. That might have been the exception to the rule for a lot of those songs. But at any rate, when I heard all the vocals on it, I just loved it, and it was such a song that's necessary for people's lives. It really speaks to anybody who's trying anything and failing. And and the music is great, and the music is really triumphant sounding, and the lyrics are very truthful and universal and timeless.
Without sounding blasphemous, there's a religious quality to that song, a spiritual quality to that song.
Yeah.
So uplifting and everything.
Yeah.
I personally think it's one of the greatest songs recorded of all time. It's at that level, and you're so absolutely right on with the way you're talking about it and everything. And I think the way that it still touches people. Here's a song that's now 37 years old that it still touches people, like the song was just recorded yesterday, or whatever. I think speaks volumes of the greatness of that, and what a great way to end such an incredible album.
And it's funny because now that I'm a more mature person than I was back then, and I've sort of had a chance to think about Todd's trajectory in life and everything, and we've never spoken about that song specifically, or whether it was written because of any particular thing that happened or didn't happen in his life. But he's a really courageous guy, and he challenges himself with every record or with every tour. He gives himself something that's not easy to do, because he wants to grow as a person and as an artist. And I don't think any of the guys in the band really understood that when we were playing with him. We didn't really think of things like that. It's something that having played with him recently, I really, really respect him for, and I realize how courageous a lot of the things he attempted were, and how there have been really hard times and failures and things that didn't go as well as he had planned or thought, and he's sort of grown up kind of on stage, in front of all these people, and he's never been afraid to do that, and he's always had faith that he would find the path or find the way by attempting something. And it's something that I always try and tell my kids too, which is, if you don't risk anything, you're not going to grow, and you have to do the things that are really scary to you. But things that you have to do, you really have to embrace them and face them, or you're not going to make any progress in your life. And I think Todd's a perfect example of that, because even every album was a growth thing, but even the fact that he never started out as a singer, and even on his first couple of albums he was not a strong singer, but he put it out there, he attempted it, he put it out there, and he was ready for rejection. I'm sure he knew that some people wouldn't like it, and that would be painful, but he did it anyway, and he's been doing it ever since. And if anyone is, I tell my friends or other people who don't know about Todd that he's just singing better than ever. I mean, he's a real bona fide soul singer now, and he really sings from the heart, and he's got a tremendous amount of power in his voice and a large range, and he always he improvises on every gig. He never sings anything the same way twice, and this is all from a guy who was a really introverted kid who used to write great songs but had somebody else sing them in his bands, and so it's a real good lesson, and it's something that I really respect him for. And he's a courageous guy. He doesn't give a shit if people aren't going to like him for certain things, and he knows instinctively, I guess, that he's got to do the things that are scary, or he's not going to get anywhere.
You're so right, and that was evident in his live performances, but also if you listen to, for instance, a recent recording of his Liars, and listen to a song called Past, and of his greatest vocal performances of his career, just absolutely fantastic. He did a duet with Daryl Hall and John Oates, a cover of a New Radicals song called Someday We'll Know, on their album Do It for Love that came out in 2004.
This is a Hall & Oates album?
It's a Hall & Oates album that features Todd, Daryl, and John all on vocals, trading off lead vocals. And the singing on that recording is so inspired. I highly recommend listeners check out this album, Hall & Oates Do It for Love. With a song called Someday We'll Know. It was actually recorded by a band called The New Radicals.
I know The New Radicals. In fact,
they had one hit, they had one album, and that was it. But the guy, Greg Alexander, was a fantastic songwriter. Hall & Oates covered a song called Someday We'll Know, which also features Todd on vocals. And you listen to the singing and the trading off of the vocals, particularly with Daryl and Todd, and then John is also on it as well, too. It is just absolutely fantastic. So,
it's funny. I know Greg Alexander, and in fact, we used to be. I mean, I don't dislike him now, but I think he lives in England now. But we were friends, and I used to see him quite often. And I met him the week that he came to Los Angeles. At the age of 16, he was a runaway from Detroit, and and he had all these incredible songs that he'd done these kind of cheapo, quirky demos of, but he had really brilliant lyrics and great melodies, and and he was he was an eccentric guy, and when finally the New Radicals came, well, he had a solo album before that, which had some amazing songs on it, and anyway, and then when the New Radicals, when their big hit, I forget, You Get What You Give.
Get What You Give, which
another
is very
terrific
Todd
song.
and very Todd influence when you listen.
Yeah, well, he was super into Todd and Hall & Oates. In fact, I mean, he probably knows that they did his song, and it probably made him feel really good because they were some of his early influences. And then right when You Get What You Give was a hit, all of a sudden he decided to retire, that he didn't want to do it anymore. And he probably could have had 4 or 5 hit singles on that album, but he was doing a tour, and all of a sudden one day, I don't know the details of it, but he just said, I don't want to do this anymore, and he just called the whole thing off. And a lot of people were pretty pissed off, I imagine, like the record company and stuff. But I mean, he continued
with the gold album.
Yeah, and he continued. I think he continued to produce and write for other people. I can't remember.
He did. Yep. Matter of fact, a little interesting factoid about him. There was a show called Archie Bunker's Place. It was this of All in the Family, and they adopted a young girl,
right?
Edith, and that young girl is an actress named Danielle Brisbois.
I know Danielle very well, actually.
And Danielle actually, she actually is featured on the album, on that New Radicals album, and he worked with her, of all people. But it's funny because
she's a great songwriter,
people
too.
Don't think about her as a recorder, they think of her as the young girl on Archie Bunker's Place, She
was also in the movie Annie, and she was also on Broadway in Annie when she was really, really young. And she's a great producer and songwriter now. She wrote that song and produced Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield.
He wrote that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and she produced it too. I mean, she probably co-wrote it with Natasha, but she produced the record, and she produced a lot of songs on that album, and I'm sure other albums. And I've known her. I met her right around the same time I met Greg, because she was his girlfriend. And I've written with her before, and she's a really, really creative, smart person. I mean, and a very nice person. Talented.
Well, swinging back to Utopia, Wizard of True Star comes out. When were the first Utopia shows? I know you did Central Park in 73. You did Central Park with Sons of 1984 recorded.
Yeah.
Do you recall when the first Utopia? There was like an aborted tour, I believe, with the Sales Brothers.
Yeah.
Went for about a month or so, and then the band was reconfigured live with yourself and John and Moogie. When did that start in I guess 73, right?
Oh boy, I can't remember. I bet Moogie would know, but I'm trying to remember our first gig where we, I can't.
You played Central Park. You were.
Yeah, that was before Utopia formed.
Right. So you played Central Park, and Sons of 1984 was recorded.
Yeah.
I believe you were part of the band then, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then he did. I guess he did the first Utopia tour, and I guess we heard through the grapevine that it was a failure and it was a technical nightmare and stuff like that. And then sometime after that, I guess it was when he called us to be in the band. And it was actually a surprise. It was a surprise because, we'd played on his records. Well, most of us, either together or separately, had played on his previous records. A couple of people like Moogie and John, I think, played on the Something Anything album, and And I played on the Wizard album, and we used to think, well, why doesn't he want us to be in the band? How come he's getting those guys? And we just figured it was probably because we weren't very photogenic or something, because the Sales Brothers looked more like rock stars than we did or something.
The spiky colored hair, and Todd had the colored hair and everything. And
I don't know if that was. I don't know. I really don't know if that was why. So we were kind of surprised that he wanted us to be in the band, and so Johnny Siomas had just gotten the Frampton gig, so he couldn't do it, and we had been playing in different combinations with Kevin Elman. And I guess Kevin, did he play on Sons in 1984? I guess he did. I
believe it was. It was yourself, Kevin, Moogie, Sigler, Todd, and then you had the horns.
Brecker Brothers.
I guess the Brecker Bros, whatever. So you do that, then you go back in the studio. The Todd album comes out in early 1974, which is a double album, which has some material that is. Todd goes back to Something Anything, where he does some of the tracks, plays all the instruments and everything, and then some featured yourself and other musicians and everything. Any recollections of the recording of the Todd sessions in late 1973?
Yeah, so I guess those happened after Wizard, right? Yeah.
Yep. So
it's all it all runs together in my mind because it was all
like late 72, comes out early 73.
Yeah.
Do the summer tour 73, record Sons of 1984 in New York and San Francisco. Go back in the studio 73 to start recording the Todd album.
Right.
Then comes out as a double album in early 4. Still, we've not seen the first Utopia album, but that album comes out in 1974. But it's not done like a Wizard or True Star where you have musicians playing on all the tracks and everything. Some of the songs, Todd does everything. Other yourself, Moogie, and some other people who had not been on a Wizard or True Star playing. And I was just curious.
Yeah. Well, Kevin,
you first see Kevin Elman for the first time on record, playing on the Todd album. That was really, I guess, that was the only difference in personnel, and both records were done in the same studio, so I don't have, they all kind of run together. Sure.
In my memory rather than having any specific memories, but again, I just thought the music was so interesting and innovative and just really cool, I do remember, I think, let's see, there's Black Mariah. That's from the Todd album.
Something Anything. That's from Something Anything.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, that's from Something Anything, but you had great songs like Don't You Ever Learn.
Oh yeah, that was really cool. Da 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 da. Yeah, that was a cool song.
Brilliant song, and
what were there was a couple of real heavy songs on that record.
Heavy Metal Kids.
Heavy Metal Kids, yeah. And I remember
King Kong Reggae was on there.
Right.
And then you had some stuff that almost harkens back to Something Anything, tracks like Is That Love and stuff like that, which Todd pretty much plays everything on there. It was this mixture of songs that featured yourself and band members, and then others where he just did all the songs by himself and everything.
Yeah. I remember one of my memories is about Heavy Metal Kids, and it was a real learning experience for me. The guys in the band were really into funk music and really into the meters and the whole Stax Volt rhythm section sound and like people like that. I can't remember who else. Tower of Power and
Average White
and in all those kind of funk bands. usually no two people play the same thing, play the same figure throughout a whole song, but everybody plays a little piece, and when you put them all together, it makes a really great groove. But separately, the little pieces are just little pieces, and we were really into that kind of music at the time, still am, I guess. And so I remember, so that was kind of our orientation when we recorded. And I remember with Heavy Metal Kids, that was one of the songs where I remember we first tried to do something where everyone was playing, each keyboard was playing something different, and the guitar was playing something different, and then and it was really funky. And then Todd didn't like it, and he just said, "Look, just play the same notes I'm playing, really dumb, just play the exact same part, which is what like heavy metal music and heavy rock music does, where you have everybody kind of playing the same thing." And we did that, and it sounded so much better. or let's say so much more appropriate for that song. And and then, of course, I guess, well, let's see, I forget what kind of heavy rock bands were popular back then.
In
Guitar
74,
bands.
you had bands like Golden Earring that were popular, songs like Radar Love, Overdrive were very big at that time frame. As far as straight ahead, rock bands. And
I think Aerosmith was big back then.
Aerosmith were just coming onto the scene. It was a year before Dream On kind of really put them on the map.
And of course, The Who and Led Zeppelin
were in their heyday. Were riding the charts. Very Deep Purple. Very, very big. So we have that record that comes out. And then really, in many people's minds, was really the beginning of Utopia, because you go out in 74, the show opens with Todd by himself performing with backing tapes, doing the first half of the show.
Yeah.
And then the second half of the show is the Utopia band.
Yeah.
And we see coming out late in 74 the debut album of Utopia, Todd Rundgren's Utopia, featuring Utopia theme, Freedom Fighters, and side 2, a song that you're one of the co-writers of, The Icon.
Right. Yeah.
And when I listened to that record, and when I first heard it, the first thing that kind of struck me was very original, great stuff and everything, fantastic stuff. I mean, Freedom Fighters is great. The Utopia theme is magnificent and everything.
Yeah, I love both of those.
Is the thing I think of is Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Yeah, they were a big influence at that time.
That's the question. Who were the influences of that? Because, I mean, that was one, John McLaughlin and Mahavishnu Orchestra, kind of had that kind of influence. And
and probably, I mean, at the time, if you would have asked Todd who his influences were, he probably wouldn't have told you. I never even knew that he liked anybody else's music, or that he listened to it, because he'd just say, well, I don't listen to anybody's music. Now he would probably say Mahavishnu Orchestra, and we listened to that, and of course, like Chick Corea's record, I think Return to Forever was, that band had come out maybe, and we were friends with a couple of guys in the band, had played with Jan Hammer, and were friends with him, and who, if people don't know who that is, he was the keyboard player for the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and just a monster.
He's got the other Powell probe too.
Sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know whether or not I was on live. He's the only other guy with a Powell probe.
Oh, really?
Hammer. Yeah. His looks different. Anyway, sorry, I was just researching it yesterday.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Is that something Roger invented or something?
Yeah. Well,
Roger invented that for. I'm sorry. Go ahead, there, caller.
No. I'm sorry. But yeah, it's there's two of there's Rogers, and which you have the pitch bend
right.
where the thumb falls on the backside, but Jan's has a sort of a horn and a pair of modulation and pitch bend wheels that looks like they were lifted off of a Mini Moog.
Ah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Boy, he sure could play the hell out of that thing too. he was a god.
Stage. He could now move around. When he on the Probe in '77 on the Rock Tour, he could play it almost like he was like a lead guitar player, and it
right.
up from not having to stand behind the keyboard and everything.
Yeah.
Which was really radical too at the time. I mean, the only person I ever remember doing anything like that was Edgar Winter. He used to have this keyboard he'd have slung around his shoulder or whatever, but it was unwieldy and stuff. And Roger really invented something that was very user-friendly for a keyboardist.
Yeah, and now I guess a lot of people use, or since then I should say, a lot of keyboard players use those. I don't think I would be comfortable with that, but I'm just
no keytars in your past?
Not really. But yeah, I don't know. I play better when I'm sitting down usually. But I remember on one of our tours we played at Carnegie Hall, and which is a terrible place to play electric loud music.
74. You played there in 74.
Yeah, and so we invited Jan Hammer to the gig, and I remember, I admired this guy so much, and I remember throughout the whole gig, I was thinking of Jan Hammer, who was probably sitting in the, in the orchestra somewhere, and it's like I played I tried to play as well as I possibly could because I knew he was in the audience, and then after the gig, the next day, he didn't come backstage or anything, and so, we all said, well, what did Jan like the show? Like, whatever happened to him? And I don't know what happened to him. And about a week later, somebody talked to him, and they said, so how'd you like our show? And he said, well, I left after the first song. I couldn't get into it.
Oh.
Or as he used to say, as jazz musicians say, I can't use it. He said, I couldn't use it, So it was funny because I was thinking of him for the whole concert, and trying to play as, intelligently and funky and clever and, grooving as possible. And he didn't even hear any of it.
Oh. Now, Ralph, talk about the live show from this standpoint. You listen to a song like The Icon, I mean, there's all kinds of, crazy rhythms and changes and everything. I mean,
yeah.
To do that live, I mean, you've got to be a very good musician, and you guys pulled that off with flying colors. This wasn't just going through a 3-minute pop song or whatever. When
yeah.
Utopia set, you guys had to really play and get those time signatures, changing time signatures, and
yeah, it's really precise music.
And you guys pulled it off, and the evidence is that album. I mean, it's just brilliant. How
Thank you.
you guys pulled it off and everything. Talk about that.
Well, the album kind of doesn't do justice to it because when we recorded this stuff and when we played it in concert, a lot of the pieces were longer, so they kind of had a chance to unfold in a gradual way, sort of in a more of a natural way. And when we recorded them, that's how we recorded them. And then Todd edited everything for the record. He wanted to make sure that every piece or every song we recorded was on the record. So he had to shorten everything considerably, which, I mean, when I listen to it, I can appreciate it today, but still some of the songs, you just start to get into the groove and then it changes, Mm-hmm. But we rehearsed for quite a long time for that tour, We didn't rehearse for the recording, and again, we did the recording in pieces the same way we did Wizard. And he encouraged each guy to come and bring something in. So those of us who were writers would bring in different pieces of music that we'd written, and he'd like some of them and some of them he wouldn't like. And then we would record them separately. So we would maybe do a couple in one day. And then later on he put them together and made a whole kind of conceptual trip out of the whole thing. And then we rehearsed a very long time. I don't remember how long, but we rented a theater. I believe it used to be the Fillmore East on the Lower East Side.
Sure, yep.
And so we rented that theater for 3 or 4 weeks, and we came in and played every day for 8 or 10 hours. We had our sound man there, and we had the same gear that we would have on the gigs. So everything was coordinated really well. And so we really knew that music really, we knew it really well, and we played it many times before we actually went on tour. And
because the playing is just magnificent. And you were saying, I'm sorry?
Oh, no, just that this recent tour that I did with Todd, which I took over for Roger in the middle, but I got one rehearsal with the band before our first gig, and it was pretty scary and pretty ragged. For me anyway, the first couple of gigs were, because Todd doesn't really like to rehearse. And that kind of music, it really, there was, the concerts came out fine and everything, but I think everybody in the band would have been a little more comfortable if we could have rehearsed for at least a couple of days, before we started.
We'll get into that in a moment, because I definitely want to talk about the shows you've done and everything, and the UK and everything. I did want to finish a little bit more on the Utopia days. Initiation follows the Todd Rundgren's Utopia record, again recorded late 74 into 75. The record comes out, features Real Man. You play on that record, and that, to me, was the culmination of the trio of Todd's records, starting with The Wizard and culminating with Initiation, that they fit so seamlessly together, and it's kind of like the ideas, the germs were planted on A Wizard or True Star and came to complete fruition with Initiation as far as the way those three records work seamlessly together. So you had that one side of Todd's career, but then, of course, Utopia launching as a full-fledged entity of itself with the Todd Rundgren's Utopia record that you just spoke about. And then comes the follow-up, Todd Rundgren's Utopia, Another Live in 1975, which starts with a fantastic track, starting the album, co-written by yourself, called Another Life, that starts off that album. And can you talk about how that all came about?
Another Life?
Wonderful song that you co-wrote to start off Todd Rundgren's Utopia, Another Live, that was released in 1975.
Yeah, well, I actually had that piece of music. I didn't write it specifically for Utopia. I'd been working on it, maybe a year or so beforehand. And originally I had envisioned, I guess, like a big band or like a jazz group with several horns, or even like a 16-piece big band doing this song. And I had charts for it and everything. And then Todd, again, he wrote this beautiful song to it. Excuse me. Which just has a beautiful melody, and actually I wrote the melody, but it has great words and a great concept, and he's singing it great, and it just blew my mind when I heard it, when I heard the finished thing, because we were never allowed to I mean, we weren't forbidden to come to the mixes, but we weren't really invited. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold.
Take your time.
Sorry. And so when I heard that, I just, I was so blown away, and so I felt really so lucky to have him, transform my song that way. Yeah, it was really great. It was a fun song to play, and I think when we first started Utopia, Todd had wanted to just say that all the songs were written by all of us, and we really didn't like that idea, and because we wanted to, each individual wanted to get some notoriety on their own. Mm-hmm. And I remember, I think I was elected to talk to Todd about it. And so I went and he said, well, the whole concept of Utopia is that everyone's equal and, and that it's a real band. And, and I said, well, we're not really comfortable with that because, I said, listen, Todd, you've already made 3 or 4 albums under your own name and you've had hits and everybody knows who you are. But the rest of us, nobody knows about, and we would like to be, recognized as individuals. And these are the only songs, that we've had on record so far. Actually, that's not true because we had other songs covered. But we just each guy wanted credit for what he did, and. So I guess I convinced him, and he said, okay, well, that's cool. And we were happy about that.
Now, 1976 comes along, and Todd goes out and tour in 1976, but the fans show up at the show, and all of a sudden they see, a 4-piece band and everything.
Yeah.
And you're no longer there, and Moogie's no longer there and everything. What happened in that time period? Was a decision that you all made to say you now want to branch out and do your own solo work and stuff?
I was the first person. Well, Kevin was the first person to leave, and then we got Willie. But
Bat left, and Roger came in.
Yeah. And basically, it was just a time in my life I didn't want to travel anymore, and I was starting to get a lot of work in New York, good paying work. And, I thought, well, if I keep going on the road, these people aren't going to call me again, or they're going to call me and I won't be around and they'll get somebody else. So I made the decision that I wanted to stay home, which at the time seemed like, I guess in retrospect, it was probably the right decision, at least financially for me. And then once that happened, I think shortly after that, Moogie decided the same thing. He wanted to produce, and he had his studio, and he wanted to, make a name for himself as a producer and as an artist. And so he made the same decision. And then I guess, I can't remember when John Siegler did.
I think he stayed on the latest because he actually played on Faithful.
Yeah. So he stayed with the band for a while.
So I think he went all the way into early '76. Faithful was basically Todd, Willie, Roger, and John Siegler.
Right. Yeah.
Just those 4 on that record or whatever. But come '76 in the summer tour, you saw the new Utopia lineup, and it's pared down to the 4 of them and everything.
Right. Yeah. And I guess John was starting to get busy in town, and I think he might have gotten the offer to play with Hall & Oates by then, because he was in Hall & Oates' band for a couple of years.
Yeah, actually, that was later in the decade.
Was it? Oh, yeah.
Fallen up, 79, they released an album called Ecstatic. And
right.
It was produced by David Foster. And
yeah, I think I played on a little of that, too.
Did you? Yeah, great album. Was not a big album for them. They had a minor hit called Wait For Me, but great lineup, great band who toured with them, and John was with Hall & Oates at that time. They previously had Elton John's band. Hall & Oates had Elton John's band with Caleb Quay and Roger Pope and people like that.
Kenny Passarelli.
Exactly. And then after that, they put together a band that had Jerry Murata on drums, John on bass, and an unknown guitar player from Connecticut who came from a capital group called Desmond Child and Rouge.
I used to play with that group too.
Did you really? And,
I was on the first album. I was the original keyboard player.
Really?
Yeah.
I got G.E. Smith from Desmond Child and Rouge. That is a real, underground classic album. I didn't know you played on that album.
Yeah, I played. Yeah.
There was a group called Desmond Child and Rouge that came out. Their debut album came out in late 1978, early 79 on Capitol Records, and Ralph, as you just mentioned, you played on it. John Sigler, I believe, played on it.
I think I played on it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I played on one of them.
They only had 2 albums out, and Desmond Child, although the records didn't become big hits, Desmond Child went on to become one of the most successful songwriters of the last 25 years, writing everything from Livin' La Vida Loca by Ricky Martin to Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi and everything. But it's funny how there's all these connections and everything with
he's an amazing songwriter. Yeah.
That's a good segue into our next part, and I'm going to shift things around a little bit. We definitely want to talk about your Wizard of True Star experiences, and we've got another 30 minutes here. But I think it's important for listeners to know Ralph Schuckett and what's happened since then, since you had left Utopia. And it's a great story because I'm going to just read off people that Ralph has worked with. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. Daryl Hall and John Oates, Whitney Houston, George Benson, The Four Tops, Cher, Donna Summer, Richie Havens, Patti Smyth, Phoebe Snow, Joan Osborne. The list goes on. And I told people at the beginning of the show about how Ralph and I had worked briefly together at Columbia Records. And what I want to segue into now is Ralph's co-production of an artist who broke through in a major way in the early 90s, his work with Sophie B. Hawkins, who had a gigantic hit with Damn I Wish I Was Your Lover, and Lay Me Down to Sleep, which was another big hit and everything. And she has Ralph Schuckett to thank for that success. And Ralph, could you talk about Sophie B. Hawkins?
Yeah, well, it's funny, when I met Sophie, I guess a guy who was her manager at the time gave me a demo of hers, a cassette, and it's a really rough demo that she had made in her apartment. She lived in this really funky tenement on the Lower East Side, and she said she didn't know anything about recording, and she said she just hung a mic from the ceiling, like from the lamp fixture, and she just kind of played everything in the room and sang in the room. She didn't even know what kind of mic it was or anything. So the sound of the demo was very strange and kind of hard to, it was hard to hear things, because I guess because the mic was up on the ceiling, and if she played piano, she would just go over to the piano, which is, on one of the walls, and then when she sang, she'd just sing, I guess, under the mic, and, if she played synthesizer or guitar or something, she just played it in the room, and the mic obviously wasn't the best mic to pick up everything in the whole room. But I just loved the sound of her voice, and I thought her lyrics were just amazing. I mean, and I still do. I mean, she's, to me, one of the foremost lyricists in pop music. All her songs are very truthful, and they just really resonated with me. yeah, so I started working with her, and I think I worked with her probably for about a year at the studio at my house in Brooklyn. And then I started looking around for a record deal for her, and I went to pretty much every major label, and several of them wanted her. And the way she got on Columbia was kind of funny. Just coincidentally, Rick Chertoff was one of the co-heads of A&R at Columbia. He called me, and I was planning on calling him because we were friends, and say, listen, I want you to hear this girl Sophie. She's really great. Maybe you want to sign her. And he didn't know anything about Sophie or any of that, but he just called me out of the blue, and he said, I'm head of A&R at Columbia. How would you feel about working for me, as an A&R person? And so I said, well, yeah, I guess I'll think about it. And so I brought, I guess I sent him some of our demos, and then I brought Sophie in to his office, and he and Dave Novick, who was the other head of A&R, they both came in the office, and then she just sat there with, I believe, either at the piano. I think Rick had a piano in his office.
He did, yeah.
Yeah, and she sat. They said, well, let's, we love your stuff. Let's. Do you have any more? And we said, well, there's some new ones that we haven't recorded. And they said, well, you play piano, right? And she said, well, yeah, a little bit. And they said, well, why don't you play some of them for us? And so she did, and they were just blown away. They just really, really loved it. And then they offered me that job, and so kind of both of them went together. But I didn't want to sign her to that label just because I was getting a job there, because I figured, she had to have a relationship with the people at the label and trust them. So we had a big dinner with Rick and Dave and Donnie Einer, the president, and me and Sophie. And she got to know Donnie. And then we had meetings with the other labels that wanted to sign her too. I can't remember which ones they were, to be honest. I think it was it was Warner Brothers, Sire, and maybe Polygram. So she had people bidding for her. And for some reason, we had dinner with Donnie, and Donnie, for those who are listening, is a very charismatic, persuasive person. And he's, I don't know, how would you describe him?
He's a very hands-on kind of person. He's very
he's like
passionate about music. Some people who are heads of our companies who might have come from maybe more of a financial or business background. I mean, he's a music lover first and foremost and everything, as well as an executive and everything. And he's very artist-friendly and everything. And he was very he also, as I think he said, he's a street kid from East Harlem, who never went to college and didn't study music or business or anything. And I think he started out in the promotion department. He's a real handsome, well-built, big guy, and he's kind of so he's kind of like a Brooklyn. He was like a New York character, sort of. And Sophie grew up in New York, in Manhattan, and he grew up in Manhattan, and they were, I guess, maybe close to the same age. I don't remember. Anyway, so after we met with Donnie, she said, I want to go with that guy because I know, Donnie, I know he will. Donnie said, I will kill for this record. That's how bad we want you. I will, I will. This record's going to be a hit, or I'll, quit or something. I don't know. He was very persuasive. And, of course, Rick is a wonderful guy, Rick Chertoff, and a great producer. And he's always been super artist-friendly, and he had produced some hit records at the time. And she got along really well with him. And so it all kind of worked out for a while. And
At the time, I don't know, is this still interesting?
Yeah.
I don't want to ramble. At the time, my wife, who was a songwriter and had a bunch of hits right around the same time.
Shipley, I might tell our listeners. Ellen Shipley, who's had several records under her own name as a recording artist, but also co-wrote the biggest hit of her career, the co-writer with Rick Knowles, a very well-known songwriter. Ellen and Rick co-wrote Heaven is a Place on Earth, which is #1 single by Belinda Carlisle, amongst her many successes, and that's Ralph's wife.
Yeah. We had been bi-coastal for a couple of years because Rick lived in L.A., and so she had to be out here in L.A. a lot. And all my work was in New York, so I had to be in New York all the time. So we kind of had two homes, and we rented a place out here in Hollywood, and we had our daughter was 3 or 4 years old, and so we would just schlep her with us across country. And whenever I got time off from my work, then I would bring Casey, my daughter, with me out to L.A., and Ellen was staying at the house we were renting in L.A., which we were sharing with a friend. And it was a really fun time, but it was also a kind of a traumatic time for me because there were so many things up in the air. And I really didn't want to move to L.A., but Ellen and Rick were really, really hot at the time, and everybody wanted to write with them, and so they had so many great opportunities to write for or with a lot of successful people, and so she really needed to be there. And when they offered me the job at Columbia, they wanted me to be in New York, so it was a real kind of a stressful time because when they offered the job to New York, we'd already packed up our house and moved half of the stuff out to L.A., and we had found, and Ellen had found a house for us to rent in L.A., and here they wanted me to stay in New York, and Sophie was in New York, and it was just crazy, and I didn't know if I could, handle the complexity of all that because I had a young daughter and
had a lot on your plate.
Yeah, and she was 3 or 4, and Ellen was working. She was really hot, so she had all these opportunities, and I was working around the clock in New York because I was writing music for commercials and playing on people's records, and I think there was 1 year when I didn't have one day off until August or something. So anyway, I asked, I told Rick, this is a really big responsibility, and I may have to go out to L.A. from time to time, and I really need some help doing this record. And he said, well, how about if I do it with you? And I said, great. So that's kind of how that came about. And as it turned out, he's just a fantastic producer, and so it turned out to be, fortuitous, as they say. And then we had a big hit with the song "Damn, I Wish I Was Your Lover," which is just a great song. And it's funny because when I was trying to get Sophie a deal, will show you how much things have changed since then. I guess that was right around 1988. No, 1989 or 90. 91 was when the record came out.
You're on 91, yeah.
Yeah. So about 5 or 6 of the labels, the A&R people, high-level A&R people that I took her demos to, told me, well, the only hit song she's got is "Damn, I Wish I Was Your Lover," and no radio station will ever play a song that has the word "damn" in it. And we just laughed when we would hear that. We would just think like, that's so silly, But if you think back, people didn't curse on television, and people. Prince hadn't come out yet with all his sexual stuff, and the media was a lot more prudish than it is now. So a lot of people passed on her for that reason.
The thing with Tipper Gore with the stickering of the records.
Right. Excuse me. And as it turned out, we knew we had a hit record even before we made, the record. It was just, sorry, I'm choking to death here. It was just such a great song. It was so catchy. It had a great beat, and the lyrics were incredible. And so that we knew, we were really confident that was going to work out.
And the rest
which
of
it did.
And it became a big hit. And As I Lay Me Down to Sleep, was a big hit as well for her. And it's just it's a great story and everything. And it goes to show, you just never know and everything. And when you got belief in something, great things happen. And that's certainly a great example of that and a great story. I did also want to ask you about Lou Reed, because around the time you first hooked up with Todd, you also working with Lou Reed in a live capacity. Around that time, you released Transformer, the David Bowie produced album with Walk on the Wild Side and everything, and then followed up with another album, great album called Berlin. And I was curious what your connection was with Lou Reed at that time.
Well, I owe that all to Moogie, as I do my Todd connection. We were really good friends, and I was in Moogie's band, and we had this 2-keyboard thing going. We really had a nice, we played together really naturally, so Lou Reed, Transformer had just been released, and he had a hit song, Walk on the Wild Side, and he had a band called the Tots, which were these teenage kids from Westchester who were really raw and could barely play their instruments, but Lou Reed liked that. He liked the sort of amateurish aspect of rock and roll, which I like that too. But I guess he got too many comments that the band was unprofessional when he started his tour, so his lawyer was really, or manager, I think, they were just desperate to find some musicians, and they knew Moogie, and they called Moogie and asked if he could get a band together, and he hired me, and that's kind of how that worked out, except Lou Reed really didn't like the sound of the 2 keyboards, and for some reason he didn't like me either. I'm not sure why. How could you not like me? I mean, give me a break. So
he's a great artist, but he's also an eccentric character as well,
to say the least. So he was going to send me home, and then Moogie kind of saved me because he just said, well, Ralph's a great rhythm guitar player. And I played a little guitar, I knew a few chords, and I could play in rhythm, but I wasn't like, Keith Richards or something,
Mm-hmm.
And so Lou said, oh, yeah, well, let's hear you play. And so we played a couple of the songs, and they were all really simple songs, that only had 2 or 3 chords.
Sure.
And since I couldn't really play that well, he loved that. So I ended up playing guitar on probably 70% of the show, on the tour, and it was just wild. I mean, it was in the height of the glitter rock, sex and drugs era, and the audiences were just wild. Just like people would come all dressed up in wild costumes and people would be shooting up in the front row to get Lou Reed's, attention. They thought that he would like that, and it was just crazy.
Song heroin that he had.
Yeah, and the band, the guys in the band it was a real group of partiers. So it was a pretty wild time. And I remember the first night we played and we went back to the hotel and I remember Moogie saying to me, "Man, we didn't get any chicks, like how come we didn't, we were kind of, we did a couple rehearsals with him and we flew out there and we played the gig and, we were kind of, our heads were spinning and he said, all these girls, look at all those groupies around there. And so the next night everybody said, well, we're going to talk to the girls tonight. So, we, I don't know, talked. I wasn't really into that kind of stuff at the time because I was married. Mm-hmm. But, some of the guys, talked to girls and said to come back to the hotel. And when we got back to the hotel, there was just hundreds of glitter people, like all over, on every floor and in the lobby and just all these, wild-looking, stoned-out people waiting for us because whatever girl somebody, picked up, probably told 10 of her friends, and then they would tell their friends, and so it was just like a madhouse. And then after that, every town we played in, that's what happened. Until eventually, I guess the hotels, some of the hotels wouldn't allow it, and they just called the police and kicked everybody out. But it was pretty wild.
Wild stuff. And then Lou then had a band with Steve Hunter, Dick Wagner, and recorded 2 live albums, Rock and Roll Animal and Lou Reed Live, that came out.
Yeah, and those were great bands.
Which were fantastic bands.
Yeah, and it's funny because one of the reasons our band was so into partying was that whenever we played really tightly, Lou hated it, and he'd come backstage and say, "You guys suck, you're a bunch of old farts, I want rock and roll out there," but then whenever, I remember one night a couple of the guys in the band took acid and before the show and other people were drinking and stoned and whatever, and so the set was just really chaotic and people forgot what to do, and it was just really a mess. And then Lou came backstage and said, "Man, this is a fucking rock and roll band," He really liked the chaos. So all these guys who were trying to be professionals, they all just kind of said, "Well, fuck it, if that's what he wants, we'll have a good time." So
from a man who recorded a record called Metal Machine Music.
Yeah.
Basically, it was a whole album of feedback.
Yeah, I know.
Whatever, so it doesn't surprise me hearing that story. For time's sake, because we only have 15 minutes left here, Ralph, and there's just some great stuff to talk about here. Is the tour with A Wizard or True Star, and talk, if you can, about what happened over in the UK and everything. I don't know if you've had a chance to address that and everything, and how did those shows go?
They went really well. I think they were both, the Amsterdam and London were sold out, I'm pretty sure. And just, everyone there was a Todd fan, so the audiences were just so warm and friendly, and the crew, the English guys we had working for us were fabulous. They just were so knowledgeable and experienced and good-hearted and supportive, and so it was really great. And again, I would have liked, we could have used at least one rehearsal because we were off for about a month before we went there, but it went really well, and Todd, of course, I don't know if you've seen any of the Wizard shows, but he does a lot of costume changes, and he's just such a consummate entertainer now, as well as being a musician and a performer. And he just was so entertaining and spontaneous, and excuse me, he really cares about his fans, and he and they love him, and it's just so it's always it's a real comfortable, good vibes, fun show.
What was the first half of the show? In Akron and everything, it was Utopia. It was Roger, Todd, Prairie, and Chasm coming out doing stuff from Oops, Wrong Planet, Adventures, etc., and everything. What was the first half of the UK?
The opening of the show was Todd did or is in the middle of finishing an album of Robert Johnson songs. Mm-hmm. And so the opening of the show was him and Jesse Gress, the guitar player, and Prairie and Kaz doing these new Toddish arrangements of Robert Johnson songs. And
Crossroads being one of them?
Sorry?
I think Crossroads is one of them.
Yeah, And Todd's a great, fantastic blues player and singer. I mean, he really, I think one of his first bands, Woody's Truck Stop, was a blues band.
It was in '66, yeah. We had a
and he has real respect for that kind of rhythm and blues, American rock and roll rhythm and blues tradition. And he's been through a lot in his life, so when he sings a blues song, it's real. And so that's what the opening of the show was. And it's funny because my sister is a black music fanatic. Ever since I was a little kid, she was turning me on to blues, and she's quite a bit older than me. And she when I played with Todd, 20 years ago, she came to all the gigs, and she said, I don't know, this guy just doesn't do it for me, And but when she saw this Robert Johnson thing, she said, this guy is a heavy dude. She totally loved him. And she said he really connected with the songs and the audience, Except he didn't let me play on any of that stuff, which is a drag because I'm Mr. Blues, but he wanted to have a different instrumentation. So.
Now, how about the California shows? How did those go? You played up and down LA and
yeah, they all went really well. The first one that I did was San Francisco, and frankly, it was. I mean, I was so nervous that I don't know. We went up and had the rehearsal, and it turned out that we had like maybe a 2-hour rehearsal, and where we just covered maybe, 3 or 4 songs. And I was just a nervous wreck because, there's a lot of stuff to memorize and to play correctly on that record. So the first couple of gigs, I was just so terrified I can't even remember what happened. But when we got to L.A. and Ventura, then I started to relax, and they were great. And of course, those guys in the band are great players, and they were so supportive and helpful and fun to hang out with, and so they really made it easy for me.
Well, playing it wasn't really just like playing the record because the performance is so theatrical. It was just a matter of also timing too, because when do you start? When Todd comes out with the costume change and all that kind of stuff makes it even more intricate and everything. And the fact that the band pulls it off with flying colors and everything is a testament to how great everyone in that band is.
Yeah, because all the songs, there's only one break between songs, and it happens, I guess, after the first 4 or 5 songs. And so they all come really fast, one right after another, seamlessly. And so there's no place to, take a drink of water or wipe yourself off or, I don't know, look at the charts or whatever. So it all goes by really fast, and it's all, there's no breaks. So it's kind of it was pretty hairy for me at the beginning. And also, I'd say 80% of the songs start with piano, solo piano, which was my job. So, it was pretty, it was pretty scary for me. But it seemed to. Then I saw some bits of it on that, people had taped on cell phones or video cameras and stuff, and it sounded great. It sounded fine. I just looked really serious in the pictures because I was thinking, oh my God, I can't even remember what to do here.
And also, the show is done slightly differently than the album sequencing because Sunset Boulevard into Utopia actually ends the show, while on the actual record it's on side one. So things were changed up a little bit in the actual live performance of it.
Yeah, to make it more, to make the end more.
Said that, if CDs were in that day, probably that's how the record would have been recorded,
Yeah.
Probably would have ended, instead of with just one victory, it would have ended, with the Utopia reprise, the Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah. Well, that's, he switched a couple of things around just to make the end of the show more exciting, I guess. And it was quite an experience for me because before that I really hadn't played in public in about 25 years. So
really,
because I've been composing for TV in my little studio, usually just by myself, or like writing charts for a really great piano player to play my stuff. So so now I just want to play. I really want to do it all the time.
Well, I know you certainly made a lot of people very, very happy. I mean, this tour and these shows have just been real special landmarks for a lot of people who were fans of Todd Rundgren and Utopia. And I don't think anyone ever thought that they'd ever see this, come to fruition. The great record finally being performed live and everything. And thanks to Doug and Mel and Rundgren Radio, that happened and everything. And certainly people expected it to be great, but I don't think people expected it to be as incredible as it was on just every level, from Todd with the costume changes and just the whole performance aspect, the band, just everything about it, lighting. It's first class all the way. I mean, it's just really, really special. And I know a lot of artists, that's been the trend recently, from Springsteen, on down, have been doing albums, in their entirety as part of their shows. But I challenge anyone to match what this show's all about and everything, and the way that it works and everything. It's really, truly special. And
thank you so much.
I'm very happy.
I feel like I have a whole family of extended family of people on Facebook now of Todd's fans. And it's funny, most of Todd's fans are very smart people and really interesting people, and they I'd say his audiences tend to be well educated and culturally really hip and open-minded.
Good looking too,
Huh?
Devastatingly good looking too.
Oh yeah, we got to say that too. I'm a married man.
Say that, Ralph, because after the show in Akron, there was an after party, and I had a chance to meet people, and I was first, stunned by just the variety of places that people came from, which was amazing. But then, obviously, one of the questions is, what do you do? What's your occupation? I mean, there were people who were doctors and things like that,
Yeah.
Go back to, the original days of Todd Rundgren's Utopia and everything, and how they've, moved on, in their lives and everything. Many of his fans are people very accomplished in their own lives and everything.
Yeah.
And that the music still has an impact on them all these many years later and everything, and I think that's...
Yeah. I wish there were more young people, who for the most part don't know who he is or what he did or anything. I mean, on a large scale, because... But
that is happening in the UK, because, one thing that inspired this whole thing to happen was there's a whole new generation of electronica. They call it a whole genre. It's a lot of club-oriented music, but for a bigger term, it's called electronica.
Yeah.
And there's a whole series of artists who have discovered Todd's music, and I'm specifically talking A Wizard or True Star, Initiation, that era kind of music or whatever, and have made it their own. There's a group called Simian Mobile Disco.
Simian Mobile Disco. Should I check them out?
Great band, big in the UK electronica scene, for the young kids or whatever. And on their latest album is a song called Synthesize, which samples Born to Synthesize from Initiation.
No kidding.
And perhaps the biggest group of its kind of that genre is a band called Daft Punk. And Daft Punk,
oh, yeah, I have a lot of their records.
Their movie, they did a movie called Electroma that came out in 2006, and you can get it through Netflix. It opens up with International Feel.
Really?
The whole sequence of the movie, you can see it on YouTube, opens up with the guys driving through a desert out in California to International Feel. So it's great to see that these young musicians are discovering Todd many years later. And incorporated into their music. But I agree with you. It would be nice to see even more of those younger people at the shows and everything.
Well, I know they would love it. That's the thing is, I mean, it's such a, the music is so satisfying, and he's a great entertainer, and it's the music is very, it's unpredictable, and it's pretty fresh, compared to a lot of stuff that's out there. And I do know guys in bands, like young guys in bands who love Todd. And a couple of my friends came to the LA show. But I just, it's kind of sad to me that that the audience, that he can't fill a larger, like a stadium or something, because I think there's something in his music that so many people would connect with, of all ages, My kids, I brought my kids, and they're 24 and 17, and, they love it. My son loved it, and he's really into, like Kill Switch Engage and My Bloody Valentine and All That Remains and all those kind of new, I guess, metal, really aggressive bands. And he loved Todd. He loved the show.
Ralph, thank you so much. We've run out of time here.
Thank you, David. It's
talk for hours.
I like to talk. I love to talk. I hope no one fell asleep.
Not at all. Not at all. This was absolutely terrific. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you again. We appreciate it. And it's been an honor having you on the show and everything. And
likewise.
And hopefully we'll be able to have you on again if you're up for it and everything. And
always.
Thank you again.
Thank you, man. And if you come out to LA, look me up. We'll hang out. We'll do something.
Absolutely. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, and thanks to all the people listening too.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night.